Hello, my name is Janet Stanley, and I'm the host of Beauty, Balance, and Peace, a foundation for weaving voices of peace. I'm delighted to introduce you to a friend and colleague of mine who's calling in from California somewhere, and I want to tell you a little bit about her before I bring her on. Diane McLean is a transformational leader, coach, and facilitator. She's a visionary architect, and she's a sustainability trailblazer. She's the leader of a climate reality program, and she specializes in daylighting. She's also developed a DVD that won awards for integrative building design, which I'm sure she'll tell us more about. Recently, her focus has been shifting to conscious architecture, and in service of raising the consciousness of sustainable building for the entire global future of all of us. So she is obviously a peacemaking sister, and I welcome you, Diane. Thanks for taking the time today.
Certainly. Thank you so much for having me, Janet. I'm really excited to have this conversation with you.
Yeah, I am too. So there's a lot in your introduction that I want to talk about. It's interesting what a lifetime of focus can do for us, isn't it? when we put it all down on paper. So your last 25 years has really been anchored in the architectural world and in sustainability, which is such an important part of building a future that has peace in it for all of us. Where would you like to start today to talk about your work?
Well, let's start with the word peace.
Okay, wonderful.
I know that's, it's like that's what's bringing us together here.
Mm-hmm.
And honestly, I never really thought of myself as a peacemaker. I've thought of myself as a healer, as an architect, as a healer, as somebody that's holding this container for us to try to make the shifts we need to make to be more in alignment with spirit, with nature, with the divine, however you would like to say that. And so when you first presented this opportunity to me as being a peacemaker, it's like, oh, well, I guess it kind of does come with peace. Because it's like that's what I'm working with is really creating more balance in the world, through architecture, but the knowing that as we move more into alignment with ourselves and that inner being of alignment with nature, with spirit, that we're naturally bringing more peace. We're naturally bringing more balance and harmony and wisdom into everything that we do. And for me as an architect, it's like, okay, we're bringing it from the inside out as we move more and more into alignment with who we are. But also there's a capability at that point to sort of shift and mold the built environment so that it's conducive to raising a vibrational frequency toward more peace and love and harmony in the world. And then being able to help people make transformational shifts they need to make to be in more alignment with that. So that's kind of an overarching umbrella of where I've been working. It doesn't always translate in those words or in that level of feeling when I'm doing my everyday work, because it's a lot more broad. And so working with people to help an understanding of that within the language of whatever they speak, if it's a technology language or an architecture language or a language of healing, just to be able to work in the languages of whoever I'm talking with that concept in mind. Overall, that in order to really create a more sustainable world and future for us, that we need to come into alignment from the inside out, and then also that there's an opportunity for us to create the built environment to support that.
I think that makes so much sense. And it really aligns with the platform that I've come to think of as beauty, balance, and peace, especially in the built environments that I know you and I have talked about a little bit. It's quite a vision to hold, and it's refreshing. I know that I've told you that in another part of my life, many, many moons ago, I worked with architects and engineers as a supplier of communication cabling equipment. And it's really kind of a full circle to come back around and be talking to you about sustainability and about building environments that are conducive to transformation. That really resonates with me. I want to say a little bit more.
I'm glad that you're coming full circle.
Yeah, well, life does that, doesn't it? Cycles and cycles. I tried to get away, but here I am. Yeah, do you want to talk more about the transformational spaces that support transformation in particular? That sounds really interesting to me.
Yes, so one of the things that's happened in my architecture field and even in sustainability is that everything's gotten so complex. You know, it used to be that you had the architect as the master builder that made all kinds of decisions, right? And all the design decisions was held in, you know, one thing. So there was a vision and a bringing it into form through one person directing it, and then a lot of people doing the work. But there was a much more focused level of vision into form. Mm-hmm. So now what we have is a lot of technology. We have a lot of different, you know, materials and processes and all the different interdisciplinary approaches to looking at problems and possible solutions. We have different regulations in different areas and different countries, and so there's a lot of things that are going into this. And what I've been finding as time goes by is that people want to do things faster. As I was going to say cheaply, I suppose we can use the word cost effective, but it's, you know, it's like, really, how do we save dollars? How do we get short-term profits? How do we get everything moving faster? And I think that within that, there's a lot that's gotten lost, or maybe at least put aside. And so basically, I'm trying to bring it back. Mm-hmm. And I think that, so the transformational leadership is about, well, in any kind of a transformation, you know, you've got basically caterpillar to butterfly type of transformation. So you're not just making small shifts, you're really making these huge transformational shifts, right? And so, and the desire is to really go back to, who are we? Whether you're talking about as an individual, in a relationship, in our families, in our communities, our regions, our nations, our world, right? So at whatever level, coming back to that question of who are we? Who are we becoming? Where are we going? And quite honestly, people don't have good answers to that, because we're really disconnected. We're disconnected from ourselves and from each other and from a larger picture of what are we doing with our world. And when we have things like the hurricane that's going on right now, or we have fires and floods and earthquakes and disastrous things going on, and people are scratching their heads and saying, maybe there's something I should think about. Maybe we need to give it more thought. And so, you know, unfortunately, we kind of have, as a society, we've needed some of those disasters to start waking people up that, yeah, we need to make some changes. Yeah. And at the same time, it's not changes that are about more technology, that are about more doing, more action, more just, you know, hurry and rush to fix it before the next disaster.
Mm.
I think there's really such a need for us to return to that center and say, whoa, there's a lot going on. This is getting overwhelming. So how do we go back to a more holistic view
Right.
and look at where it's like, who are we? Who are we becoming? What can we do to sort of step into a oneness in that thought leadership, to bring back a level of thought leadership so that we can move forward in a more directed way, in a more thoughtful way, in a more transformational way.
In a more conscious way, it sounds as well, right? So consciousness is a really big piece.
That's where the consciousness comes in, is that the transformations that we need to make, the big shifts, big changes, have to start with the raising of the level of consciousness toward really a knowing of our oneness, of humanity, and the need to work in concert with nature instead of against it. You know, as for instance, if we're having these hurricanes, you don't just, you know, build a higher wall so that you're preventing water from coming in and flooding, right? It's like, oh, well, maybe we need to, you know, we're looking at our whole zero carbon future possibilities. We're looking at maybe we don't build on the coast anymore. Maybe we need to move things inland. How are we migrating people whose islands are going to be underwater soon? There's
some really big work, isn't it? Some really big ways of realizing what's not serving anymore, what to let go of so that we can make space for something new.
Exactly. And they're all interconnected. I think that's one of the things that we haven't realized, is that when we're working on all these individual issues and problems that come up in our world, and that it's kind of like, you know, holes coming into the bottom of a boat, and you're trying to but it's like, really, it's like, okay, wait a minute, you know, maybe we need to look at this more holistically, because they all interconnect.
Right.
And how do they interconnect, and what are the commonalities, and how can we embrace them, and embrace from that point who we are, who we're becoming, and what we want to do next with that higher level of consciousness. Wow.
What does that look like in your day-to-day business? How is this approach that you're so committed to playing out in your job now?
Well, there's two different things that are playing out here. One is that in the overall architectural community, as I look at what's going on, I mean, here in California, we've really been on the leading edge of things forward with zero energy and zero carbon goals, and the country in the United States and globally, I think a lot of people watch California to see what are we doing and what can we do further. There are regulations that are being rolled back, so we kind of have a push-pull a little bit on that, or maybe a lot sometimes. And then we also have different levels of architectural understanding. We have some of our large firms are on the leading edge, and they're doing a lot of sustainable work. And so there's some amazing projects. So we know that the technology is there. We have everything we need to do to move that forward. But if you take like the middle of the bell curve, and, you know, everything except like the top 5% that are doing sustainability, or maybe even top 1%, it's very small actually. Then there's a lot, because there's so many interdisciplinary approaches going on. A lot of times the decisions are made outside the architect's hands, outside, like maybe through the developers or through the contractors. And so I think architects are beginning to wake up, and so they've sort of, there's a stepping aside. There's a lot of firms that are just doing production work, and yet architects just by nature are thought leaders. And so there is a lot of waking up, and there's a lot of saying, hey, you know, we want to take that leadership out. We really want to know, how can we lead? And so the work that I've done in transformational leadership is starting to say, okay, you know, I can help guide that process.
Mm-hmm.
So that's exciting. That's a very
Mm-hmm.
exciting place to be. I think there's a lot of there's a long way to go. There's a lot of education and understanding and wisdom, but at least there's a door that's opening,
Mm-hmm.
an acceptance of, okay, I get it, that there's a, you know, that there's an issue, and that, you know, I want to raise my hand to lead. I want to become part of that process. And so there's a little bit of excitement happening. And so I'm thrilled about that. The other thing that's happening is that what I'm finding is that, and not unexpectedly either, that women are really poised to do this work, because women tend to think more holistically.
Mm-hmm.
So the systems in our society, and especially in a male-dominated architectural world for years and years, right? It's been a very linear process.
Right.
You know, you a little bit of design, and you go into the next stage, and until you get, you know, your drawings done, and you get into construction. It's just very linear across the board. And so when you're working with this transformational change, it can't be linear. It can't be competitive. It can't be confrontive, combative, any of those kinds of words. It has to start being more inclusive. We have to start holding more of a container for it. We have to start talking about the commonalities, and about how we're going to work together toward these common goals. And I think that women are really using both sides of our brains a little bit easier than men. And I'm not saying that men can't, because there's, especially a lot of the younger men are, you know, they're starting to be more in tune with the environment. They're more in tune with their children and the next generations coming up. So I'm really pleased to see that happening too. It's a bigger shift for them. And for the women, it's sort of more natural. It's kind of like you can breathe into it and say, I can work in this more holistic fashion.
Yeah.
And I can spend more time on the who are we becoming. I can spend more time in the design aspects and holistic problem solving, to be able to move forward with the more optimal solutions.
Yeah.
And so I'm finding that working with women and helping them into their leadership roles in the next generation is just really satisfying to me.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of working on both sides, with women rising up as leaders, and also with the industry beginning to open to rising up also.
So timing is really good.
Yeah, absolutely.
Timing is good. And it feels like you're talking a lot about balancing, you know, a balance of the masculine and feminine, and within ourselves, and then within communities and within businesses as well.
Absolutely.
It's not like one is going to be better than the other. It's just that we need both.
We need both, right?
We need both.
And so what it's becoming, if I go into, you know, what is that balance? It's really that if we spend time with that tuning in, that more yin work of tuning inward, and coming with solutions, design solutions from the inside out, and spending time in that place, then we can get to the more thoughtful, more conscious doing, which is more masculine, right? So we still need to do the action. There's a lot of action to be done. There's just no lack of that. But to do it from a sense of knowing where we're going,
right?
How we can take the steps to get there, and also to really be cognizant of, like a medical professional would say, first do no harm.
Right. I love that.
And that's part of my healing work. Is I've done a lot of spiritual work and meditation and healing work. And in that sense, it's like, you know, we in that holistic place of knowing ourselves more, there, that part of that balance and harmony and wisdom is about first do no harm. Let's create that wholeness within ourselves and within our built environment.
Yeah, and I hadn't thought of it that way, but I really, actually really like that. It feels like we have come a long way in, you know, over decades and centuries about making sure safety standards were there for human life, so no harm for human beings, maybe, or at least that would be the intention, but we haven't thought about the environment or the whole human being. So safety from, you know, buildings falling down, but not safety from stale air or lack of sunlight or, you know, being cut off from nature.
Exactly.
It's like a much broader, I really like that idea of no harm, and then defining it much broader.
And also remembering that we're part of nature.
Mm-hmm. It's not a separate piece.
Yeah, some of our built environment over the decades has, you can look at it and see, oh, that's when we decided to totally separate ourselves from nature, right? So there were a lot of, in the 1970s, 1980s, there were a lot of buildings were built to where you had like reflective glass to keep the sun out, and so that you could have 24/7, 365, you could have whatever kind of lighting and air conditioning you wanted in a space, right? But people were like getting sick, and you know, it's like, and not really realizing how much the built environment was affecting them.
Wow. Okay. That's really an interesting piece. So women are a key part. Mm-hmm. Holistic thinking is a key part. What else? What else goes with what you're working on?
Well, you know, I think that if in staying with like how do we create these environments at a next stage, you know, we do have a lot of technology and green building materials, and we have all of that available to us. I think one of the places that I'm going with creating more conscious spaces is to design in a way that really uplifts the energy field of an environment. Because when we're making the transformational shifts within us, wouldn't it be awesome if the built environment supported that?
Yes.
If we were fighting against it.
Yes.
So,
resounding yes.
Yeah, so that's really an important part to me, is, and maybe that's more of an aspirational goal right now, but it's part of it. It's part of it.
Right. Yeah. So when you are supporting women who are moving into this leadership role that they're poised to do, what do they need most to be supported in? What do you come across as a transformational leader and coach and facilitator?
That's a really good question.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's so much talent out there, and there's so much desire to raise up into that leadership. And what I find most is that women are still really struggling with some of the aspects of equality. Mm-hmm. And so they're struggling with the not good enough, not perfect enough, not valued enough. Mm-hmm. And I think that there's a level of understanding in our societies that need to work with that, and you know how we've worked with it in the past, and how we're going to deal with it in the future, and coming to an understanding of, oh, I didn't even know that was happening, or that, you know. So there's that level. But I think that for women, and the way that I work with women on an individual basis in coaching women, is that oftentimes we'll run up, it's like there's a desire for leadership in some way. And in order to get to the outcome of being able to actually create that, we need to move through some of the barriers, some of the inner barriers of thought forms and emotions, and maybe stemming from childhood, or maybe there's been traumas, maybe it's been in their work world, maybe it's been a collective of their environment and their relationships in their working world. Maybe it's even been more ancestral. Maybe there's patterns that have come from ancestral patterns. And so I really love to help them to identify what those are and where they might be getting stuck. Right. Sometimes it comes up in issues around their health. Sometimes it comes up in issues around financial prosperity. Sometimes it comes up in their relationships, whether it's personal relationships or their working relationships. And but there's some kind of stuckness, and so we really work to try to gently just go in and find where's the root of that. Mm-hmm. And how do we recognize, acknowledge it, and embrace it, so that we can sort of send it up and out and
release it. It sounds a lot like it's part of consciousness, bringing to consciousness the old stories and the old beliefs that aren't serving anymore, that we might not even have been aware were influencing us.
And oftentimes women aren't aware. You're right. That's really important. Mm-hmm. Really important that oftentimes they don't know what's caused. It's like I keep trying to do whatever it is, and I keep getting stuck, and I didn't even know that was there.
Yeah. It feels to me like so often when we, for smart, ambitious, successful women in so many ways who can handle so many things, that we still have blind spots about what is holding us back. And we don't go looking for them because we think, well, I can do this, or I've got this far. And so it really is helpful to have a coach and someone who can really support and hold space for that kind of looking at things that are difficult to look at.
Exactly. And to trust, to really find that there's a safe place where you can really be yourself and really trust that somebody's really there to support you. And I think that's something that, Janet, honestly, I feel like that's really a place in our world where we're struggling overall. Mm-hmm. That we've disconnected from ourselves, we've disconnected from each other, and we're getting increasingly more feelings of unsafe and more disconnected. And so if we can just start to bring that back in and create these safe places for people to be themselves, remember the truth that they are, and remember the magnificence of the light beings that they are. Remember that's what their real truth is. And once that becomes reconnected, then they can move forward and create some awesome things in the world. And I'm really looking forward to seeing some of these next generation of women come and create their awesomeness.
Yeah.
What that brings.
Me too. I can't wait. Yeah. So Diane, you sound so grounded and connected and aware of what's going on for you. And I believe you've got a pretty long meditation practice. Is that what are the ways that you really sustain your connection to your inner guidance and your beauty, balance, and peace, if you will?
Well, meditation is definitely a key for me.
Mm-hmm.
I started meditating when I was 14. And so it's been a tool that I've used my whole life. And sometimes I get busy and it will, it's like I'm into the doing, so there's less meditating.
Yeah.
I'm into big transformational shifts of my own. That's the first place I go. It's like back into the depths of spirit to understand myself at a deeper level and to be able to begin to bring that out and express it at a bigger level, holding that bigger space for myself. And it's a process of evolution. So that's really important, and it's very close to my heart about that. That's been vital my whole life. I remember when I was in college that I'd be in design studios all day and come home for dinner. And I knew I needed to go back till 2 or 3 in the morning because that's kind of just what architects do for some reason. And so I would come home and meditate and then have some dinner and then go back because, you know, some people needed coffee or chocolates or whatever they would use. But for me, it was meditation, and it still is to this day. I also love yoga and Tai Chi. I think that there's really a strong value in movement. Mm-hmm. Swimming is another thing that I do in the summertime a lot because I love the water and I love to swim, and that's very, you know, staying in more spiritual energies. So I think I just kind of, it's a combination of those things that there's the inner meditation, and then there's a movement, some kind of a flow of movement.
Mm-hmm. It sounds like you take care of your body and your mind and your soul. You're aware of the many faceted ways that we are human in the world.
Absolutely. And it's been vital to me to do that because my physical body it's a little bit fragile. I tend to be more esoteric. So for me to be grounded, I have to really take care of my health. And so I've had to be really cognizant always about what I'm eating and what I'm putting in, because that builds the life force energy. Mm-hmm. Right? So, and it helps keep me grounded. It also helps keep me connected to spirit and to be able to hold this container of energy.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel a lot of resonance with all of those things. And thank you so much for sharing so generously. It's good for us to be reminded about taking care of our bodies, because we can go off talking about peace as if it's somehow fluffy or hippy-dippy, but peace shows up where it's needed, which is in all the tough areas.
Exactly. And I feel like as we're making those inner transformational shifts, the more that we do it, the more that we become in alignment with nature and with spirit, that in that way, the more the desire for foods that are not healthy for us tends to sort of go away. You don't want the cake, the cookie, the donuts, the potato chips, right? You kind of want more healthy food anyway. So it becomes not really a restriction, but more of a joy to eat alive foods.
Yeah.
And that brings more peace as well.
That's very encouraging, because I had ice cream at lunchtime. So I'm not feeling very healthy and balanced at the moment. No, a little ice cream doesn't hurt anyone, but just the same.
You've got to keep that little bit of pleasure too, right? We have to balance.
Joy is a big part of peace, isn't it?
It really is. Yeah. Feeling
joyful. And being in spaces that support that, which I think is part of what your work does. It's hard to feel joyful in a windowless or darkened room.
Exactly.
That with no view. It's right. You know, so you're talking about building places where joy can thrive.
Exactly. That's very special. Thank you for mentioning that. That's awesome. That's very true.
Wonderful. Well, it's amazing how fast time goes when we're talking about things we love, but we're getting close to coming to a close. Is there anything you really want to make sure that our listeners hear from you before we close?
I think the only other thing is that I had a quote that I had shared with you.
Right. I love that quote.
I don't have it in front of me right now. I don't know if you do or not.
I do not, but it's a David Thoreau quote, I remember.
Yes.
And it had something to do with building castles in the sky.
is, if I can remember, let's see if I can remember it exactly. But it says, if you have built castles in the air, your work need not be lost, for that is where they should be. Now put the foundations under them.
Oh, I love that.
And I want to mention that to the viewers today because I really have carried that in my heart. I'm a natural visionary, and so I've always dreamed big. And I just feel like as an architect, that's what I've always done, is now put the foundations first, and then you can build what it is you're dreaming of. And that has really served me to be able to go ahead and allow these big visions, allow the huge transformational shifts that, yes, this is real. Yes, we can do this. Yes, I can help others to do it as well. Because I know that as we put the foundations under them, it will grow. It will rise up.
That's gorgeous. It's just delicious. And I feel like in a way that each of us that's stepping up to share our gifts and do the work we came to do is putting the foundations under peace. So yes. I'm so very, very, very grateful for the work that you're doing, Diane, and for your generous spirit in supporting young women, young and emerging women, as we say we are, to stepping into their gifts and doing their own leadership. It's so needed, and it's beautiful to watch somebody doing what they came here to do. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I just want to share also that I'm just really appreciative of the work that you're doing as well, because when you're bringing thought leaders together to talk about peace, harmony, balance, and all of the things that you are and that you exemplify, it really helps us to raise that vibrational frequency toward greater peace in the world. Thank you so much, too.
The way forward is definitely to do it collaboratively, isn't it? To work together.
It is, yes.
Yeah, beautiful. Well, thank you. It's just goodbye for now. I'm sure we'll get to talk again soon, but thanks again for taking the time today. Bye now. Bye now.
Bye-bye.